Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend this next hour together. I'm always hoping that you're safe and well and taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. My opening observations tonight, Chadwick Boseman. We lost a legend. We lost the first Black superhero. And he's still a hero in many of our lives as he leaves a legacy of greatness behind. He once stated, "You have to cherish things in a different way when you know the clock is ticking. You are under pressure." And he stated this about success: savor the taste of your triumphs today. Don't just swallow them all whole without digesting what is actually happening here. Look down over what you have conquered and appreciate what God has brought you through. The late and great Chadwick Boseman. We'll be talking about him today, hearing from people who knew him, but also hearing from people who just admired his work and his contributions to the world. But before we do that, we're going to talk about politics, what's happening in Portland, what's happening in Kenosha, what's happening from the President of the United States, and the flames that are being fueled in stoking the racial divide. Certainly, the president and other leaders might want to learn something from Chadwick Boseman, who stated, "The only difference between a hero and the villain is that the villain chooses to use that power in a way that is selfish and hurts other people." America, will our leaders ever learn? So there's a lot going on in America. As you know, what's unfolded in Portland is disturbing. Violence erupting there. There have been violent protests throughout the country in the wake of George Floyd and now Jacob Blake. And joining me now is Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, a political analyst, but also an author of an outstanding book targeting Black women about their success and their accomplishments. Avis, the name of the book is?
How Exceptional Black Women Lead. How
Exceptional Black Women Lead. And certainly we need some leadership in this country.
Absolutely.
In terms of how we deal with protesters who can peacefully protest, and then actually to rightly talk about those who have chosen and elected to move forward with violence. What do you say about this whole thing we're seeing in Portland and the president and the mayor of Portland getting into a verbal exchange?
Yeah, well, this is an after effect of a ball that I believe Trump really started down this road. I mean, he has for years now been an instigator, I call him the agitator in chief. He wants to call other people outside agitators. He's the agitator in chief. We've seen, for example, hate crime spike and reach record levels under this administration. We have a record number of hate groups under this administration. And so it's not surprising to me that we are seeing these protests devolve into very dangerous and potentially deadly situations. When you look at what happened in Portland, when you look at what happened a few days earlier in Wisconsin, what's the underlying thing here? The underlying thing, I believe, are two different issues that oftentimes I don't believe people don't really unpack. Here's one thing. The Black Lives Matter movement is a very broad, and I would argue disjointed to some degree, movement, right? And so I believe that there are some individuals who are positioning themselves and inserting themselves into these protests that are not aligned with the interests of Black Lives Matter. I believe there are those who are inserting themselves, in essence, using this movement in order to drive their own agenda. And it could be from both sides of the political spectrum. It could be people, and I believe it includes people from both sides of the political spectrum, from those who are at the farthest of the far left, who just want to, for example, end capitalism, and so they are literally attacking businesses, all the way to the far right, who are white supremacists and want to specifically cause chaos and violence in those demonstrations in order to help President Trump, someone they see as an ally. And so when all of that happens at the same time that you have a president who is calling for, hitting every foghorn. I'm not even calling a whistle,
Right.
hitting every foghorn. And as a result of that, you have his contingent of right-wing, oftentimes violent organizations that are specifically organizing to go in there with AR-15s, to go in there and either, paint, spray people with mace or with paintballs, sort of injecting violence into the situation. In both of those scenarios, it is not to be unexpected that at some point this will devolve into people dying. And it's because we have not only a lack of leadership, we have a very disgusting form of leadership that in fact creates chaos rather than seeking to create unity.
Coming up, we'll talk about Chadwick Boseman with Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, as well as super producer, Grammy Award winning producer, Kevin K.O. Coates. That's next. Welcome back to the program. So I've been talking to political analyst Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, also a successful author, and that was about politics in our first segment.
Mm-hmm.
But even in looking at the passing of Chadwick Boseman, it speaks well and looms large in terms of the browning of America,
Mm-hmm.
the success of his career in such a short span of life. In addition to that, a Howard alum, and then going on to do these this great body of work, producing it
Yes.
in such a way that he always elevated the awareness of Black men in America and Black culture in America, and how African American culture and the diaspora has impressed and influenced the world through the movie of Black Panther, which many people are still talking about, Wakanda Forever. Tell me what your thoughts are as the world continues to pay tribute to Chadwick Boseman.
Just brilliance personified, grace, a man with an immense sense of dignity and responsibility, and he understood that. I think that if you, as you mentioned, if you look at his body of work, and Black Panther was incredible, but he played our heroes, right? I mean, he created an entire body of work that lifted up our heroes, everyone from Jackie Robinson to Thurgood Marshall to even James Brown. I mean, he played our heroes. And so I think I don't think that was accidental.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was intentional. I think he made it his mission to accept roles that showed us in a light that we should be proud of, and accept roles that provided for posterity an artistic view of our contributions to this world. And I'm so proud of what he did and of the life that he lived. And it is a tremendous blow to all of us to have lost that talent, but beyond that, to have lost the man, the type of man who would take the stands that he took and live his life in such a principled way. He is just, it's an incredible loss. And my deepest condolences go out to his family.
Yeah, mine as well. It is a tremendous loss, but here's a native of South Carolina who influenced and impacted the world with a positive, inspirational, and aspirational message about
Mm-hmm.
who we are as a people. And at the same time, you put that against the backdrop of Jacob Blake, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and how he, as Chadwick Boseman, as King T'Challa, was going through tragedy and struggles on and off the screen, and fighting this quiet battle against cancer, and yet lifting people up who had cancer,
Yes.
and lifting up his own generation. I think it's important that we talk about him from the context that here's what Black Americans continue to do for America and the world. We continue to contribute. We continue to make achievements and accomplishments against the odds.
Absolutely. I think they must have some in the water in South Carolina, because I know quite a few amazing people from South
Absolutely.
Carolina.
Absolutely.
But he is, you're exactly right. I saw the other day, in addition to the incredible work that he did with St. Jude's Hospital when he himself was suffering from cancer, giving some hope and life and love to children who are battling that same disease. I saw the other day the last live video that he put on Instagram, in which he was announcing a program where he had helped to raise over $4 million to specifically target Black communities that were especially hard hit by coronavirus. Listen, y'all, he was a real one. He loved Black people. He loved Black people. And through everything that he was going through, we never knew what he was going through when he created these icons of culture that will stand forever. Okay. I'm just so, I cannot say enough about the man that he was. He was an incredible actor, but beyond that, he was an incredible man.
Yeah. And Avis, it would be nice. We talked about Black Lives Matter and the fact that people are trying to worm their way into cause distractions within Black Lives Matter. It would be nice if all people involved in any movement like Black Lives Matter, or in the NAACP, the Urban League, the church, it would be nice to look at the example that Chadwick Boseman has left us.
Yes.
Because it elevates us to a level of fighting the good fight and not losing control of who we are and what we must be to effectuate change.
Absolutely. I mean, a life well lived, and we would be well to use that example and draw on it every day as inspiration for how we too should contribute to the world.
Dr. Avis Jones-Weaver, appreciate you. Thanks for coming on and sharing your reflections of Chadwick Boseman, but also your political insights, which are always on point. And we'll continue to watch the developments as they unfold, but we can continue to try to make changes here on this program and certainly in our personal lives as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Man, I was taken away when I heard, man, and that night I had to call my wife. Even though we were in the same house, but I was in the studio, she was upstairs, and I'm like, baby, you're not gonna believe this. I felt like a family member died. What he did, I don't even think. I don't know, like him being the first Black superhero that everyone could respect and love. It was like, that had never been done in itself, really. You know what I mean? And I just had, a lot of admiration, and just, watching kids of all nationalities loving Black Panther, loving his role, seeing what he did, and the fact that, what that whole franchise, just Africa and just everything about it, what that movie did, regardless of if Wakanda's real, not a real place, but what it did for awakening people to African culture in itself was just so huge. You know what I mean? And for him to be the face of that and be gone now, it's just sad. It's sad, man.
My thanks once again to Kevin Kao, remembering Chadwick Boseman. When we return, Deanna Thomas, the daughter of James Brown, the godfather of soul, joins me to talk about her reflections on Chadwick Boseman, who played in the role of her father in the movie Get On Up. That's next. Welcome back to the program. So I'm delighted to introduce a good friend of mine. She's been on this show before, and I've had the pleasure of meeting her and just watching her live out her father's legacy. She is the godfather of soul's daughter, James Brown. James Brown's daughter, godfather of soul. Deanna Thomas joins us right now. Dee, it's good to see you.
Thank you. It's always good to see you, Kelly. You're so uplifting.
Thank you. Thank you. And every time you see me, you always have a word that lifts me up. And I just thank you for being such an inspiration to me and to so many children throughout Augusta and throughout the world. Uh, Look, we lost a good young man, a king, who portrayed the King of Soul, and that was Chadwick Boseman portraying the role of your father. What are your memories of Chadwick Boseman and that performance that he did that illustrated your father's life?
Well, first of all, my condolences go out to his family, his wife, his mother, his father, um, because they have lost a loved one. They've lost a husband, a son, a brother. He was family to us as well. I looked at him like a younger brother, although he played my father. But he was such a humble young man from right up the road at Anderson, South Carolina, not far from us, less than 2 hours. And we spent the weekend together. He came down to Augusta, around September of 2013. And he wanted to, spend time with us. He spent time with my mom and me and my sister and people who, knew Dad well. And we talked and we showed him around Augusta and South Carolina and places where my dad grew up, where he went to school, where he had businesses and different things that we did as family. If you remember the scene from when him and Jill Scott, who portrayed my mother, Dee Dee Brown, was giving away Christmas gifts during the Christmas time, and they both had their Santa suits on, the Mr. and Mrs. Claus suits. Well, that's what my dad would do. My mom didn't dress up as Mrs. Claus, but she did come out and greet people. And this was done in the 70s in Augusta, Georgia, on Walton Way, when we lived on Walton Way, which is predominantly called the Hill. And then during that time, we were the first Black family to live on the Hill because it was old money. And old money area, basically. And so during that time, like I said, in the 70s, Daddy would do things that, people wasn't used to seeing done. And he would have, during Christmas time, he'd have all these nice props out, Christmas decorations, and people from all over, Black, white, they would come. The cars would be lined up Walton Way. They'd come and they'd walk around the property to see the Christmas decorations and the lights. And I have remembered several occasions where white people would tell me. So I remember this one woman told me, she says that was the first time, she says, I'll never forget going to your papa's house and seeing all those Christmas decorations, a little white girl. First time I ever seen a Black Santa Claus.
Exactly. I'm talking to Deanna Thomas, and she is the daughter of James Brown, the godfather of soul. When we return, we're going to talk to her a little bit more about her reflections of Chadwick Boseman and how it's impacted the lives of, we've heard of how it's impacted her family's life, but about the children that she works with there in Augusta. We're back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. I'm talking to my good friend, Deanna Thomas, a woman that I know and have so much admiration and respect for. She is the daughter of the late and great James Brown. And that poster you see behind her, the picture, I should say, behind her, that's framed as of Chadwick Boseman portraying her father in Get On Up. Deanna, you were talking earlier about the impact that Chad's life has had on so many youth around the world, seeing them on social media. But I know that you work directly with a lot of youth through the James Brown Family Foundation and teaching them how to stay in school and get an education. And it's all through the art of music and how they listen to you and learn from you. What impact did Chadwick Boseman have on them? And does he continue to have that impact on them?
Well, it's really cool because he had an opportunity to see them perform 3 times. When he came to spend the weekend with us, he saw them perform that weekend. And they also performed at the Augusta and Atlanta movie premieres. And he had a chance to speak to them for a short few minutes before the premiere in Augusta. And As a matter of fact, I just recently posted on my social media pages a little something he said about them at the premiere. We caught it on camera, and he said that it was amazing how they were able to tackle and capture my dad's band members and the lyrics and how this program is a good program, the James Brown Academy of Music pupils, to nurture them and to nurture their artistry, and that he hopes that the program continues. And so himself, he was a young kid trying to make it one day, you know, in the arts, and he did. And to be able to see that, it's inspiration for other kids. You know, back in the day, we used to say, monkey see, monkey do. Well, if a young child can copy a person and they not doing the right thing, surely if they are doing the right thing, they can copy that too.
Yeah.
It was an amazing thing to watch them, you know, take on all the roles of his band, and some of them actually take on the lyrics in the song. So I think, you know, it's a great program for them to nurture them, nurture their artistry, and I hope it continues.
Before I leave you, it's always a delight and a pleasure to have you. You know, you're welcome here anytime. What's your message to the world as you've seen it through the portrayal of Chadwick Boseman playing your father? Two men who are now forever ensconced in our minds as being people who left a legacy of greatness.
God knew what he was doing when he brought us Chadwick Boseman. God bless his parents, trained him, raised him greatly. But God had a plan way before the foundations of time for Chadwick Boseman. To us, his life was cut short. God already knew this. However, the icons that he allowed this young soul to portray in such a pure way, now he sits at the table with his crown with these icons. Don't ever believe that you can't. People used to ask my dad, what does soul mean to you? When people tell me I can't do something, my soul can. So young professionals, young people that want to be professionals, don't let nobody, not even your mother and father, may not agree with a way that you're doing it, but if God is speaking that into your spirit, you got to go with God.
That says it all. Deanna Thomas, that's another reason why I love you so much. Thank you.
Love you too, Brian.
We're coming back with much more of the program after this. We'll talk to someone who is moving forward to make sure that Chadwick Boseman is recognized as royalty. That's coming up next. Welcome back to the program. So joining me now is a dear friend who I've seen grow into becoming a princess. I mean, literally a princess. She is Princess Angelique Monet. She is the former Miss South Carolina, USA, and she's from the same area that Chadwick Boseman is from. They grew up knowing each other and yet trying to work together, never got a chance to do that in the capacity to which she wanted. However, they have similar backgrounds in moving on to stage and screen and having a lot of international travel and doing a lot internationally. I know her as Angel. Angel, good to see you today.
It's good to see you too, unfortunately, under the circumstances.
Yeah, the circumstances are indeed very sorrowful, yet we can rejoice in the fact that Chadwick Boseman went on to do some great things in his young years, 43 years. He did so much and accomplished so much, going to Howard University, then moving on to Oxford with the help of Denzel Washington and Felicia Rashad, and the great body of work he leaves behind. I want to know, what do you think about the fact that this was a a young man that you knew growing up. What are your memories of him?
Quiet, humble, hardworking, traditional Southern in those respects, a person who loved family. And what was beautiful is the fact that we're from South Carolina, but it was staged in New York. And seeing him behind the scenes, as you know, he was into theater, and I was into theater and still am. So, but he was always very quiet and amazing in that respect. So to see his work and then to see such a humble person who never let his achievements go to his head, never until to date, it's actually quite amazing, because it's very rare that you meet individuals that would keep that type of integrity.
Yeah, integrity, and I would have to say humility as well. Growing up in the area of South Carolina, tell me what it was like to see talented people like Chadwick and yourself, and so many other talented people move on and have this quietness and yet this determination and steely resolve to represent Black Americans and all Americans for that matter in a very positive, aspirational, and inspirational way.
I would say it started in the home. Many of us had amazing families, and not only did we have amazing families, it was a sense of community. And one thing about the tri-state area of South Carolina, which is an amazing place, is we have many individuals who are icons. Like we had the Peg Leg Bates, and so many icons are from there. But most important, it's a community atmosphere. We were all raised into the church, and it was like Africa, that it takes a village to raise a child. Now, the other thing that's amazing is our families really wanted to instill for us to go to historically Black colleges and universities. And that also helped us have our self-esteem. I was supposed to go to Howard, but I was underaged. So my family wanted me to go to St. Augustine's College. At the time it was a college, now we're a university. He went on to Howard. And it was those schools that made us become who we are today as well.
You know, that's where I met you at St. Augustine's College. You were working with us at WRAL TV, which is a powerhouse in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and certainly a powerhouse throughout North Carolina, great station. You came on board and you always had this spark of wanting to do more, not only for yourself, but for other people. And yet you kept it so quiet about your pedigree, the people in your family who were very pioneering and trailblazers, if you will. You're the granddaughter of a very famous person in South Carolina politically. And while you're not necessarily talking about yourself, but talking about Chadwick, there are similarities into the greatness that was poured out to him and to you. Tell me about that, if you will.
Well, I think that, using the word thing, I believe that we must find our own way. Our families are here to teach us, but we must find our own way. So when you met me, I was finding my own way. And now, because my grandfather, one is deceased and the other one is an elder, he's just retired last year, by the way, I've made a name for myself. So now it's important to discuss my heritage, my roots, where I come from, because just like the late, I'm going to call him the king, we never bragged about the family we came from because we always wanted to become something great. Now, coming from a political family, on both sides of politics is why I'm with the UN. It was difficult, but the arts is what kept me grounded, because I could find a character. And when you met me, I was a ventriloquist, and then I went on to New York to do stage work. And what was beautiful about Chadwick is he was also doing stage work. I was performing at the Schomburg as a ventriloquist for children. I ended up going off Broadway. He was also working off Broadway. I was living in Brooklyn. He was living in Brooklyn. So I would often see him from that background. But at the time, I personally didn't want to be labeled as a Southern belle. I wanted to be a New Yorker. But then in time, I realized the Southern roots and the traditions is what makes me who I am. And family and value is very important. And that's also what Chadwick possessed in his life.
All right. Princess Angelique Monet joining us from London, talking about her childhood friend, Chadwick Boseman, and we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to the program right now. Joining me again, coming back from the break, is Princess Angelique Monet. And, you know, we were talking about Chadwick Boseman, the fact that you grew up in South Carolina, knew him, knew his family. And but there's something else you're trying to do, and that's to establish his legacy beyond Hollywood. How will you do that?
Yes, it's very important to establish his legacy beyond Hollywood, because as a royal and in the nobility circle, I also want to make sure that he is a legendary king. So on behalf of the League of Pan-African Royals, which are the children of the last paramount rulers before colonization of empires of Africa, he is Yoruba descent. And many of the children of the transatlantic slave trade are Yoruba descent coming from royal bloodline. So we had a meeting, and it is official that he will be installed. We were going to do it in 2021, and it was a surprise. Unfortunately, the circumstances are that he's not with us right now, but we're still going to install him as a king. And he will be installed in London, and we're going to have a ceremony where he will be His Majesty King Chadwick Aaron Boseman.
That's really amazing. That's an incredible. That's incredible.
Thank you. And to add to that, he's coming from where, do you know the designs of his costume?
I don't know, but I just know that that was a great costume that he wore.
Thank you. Well, they made it more modern, but the designs are coming from the last paramount king of the Remo Kingdom, which is how I'm a Demi Bossy, and I represent the Inoko Royal House. So this is the house that he's actually going to become the king of, which is amazing. He's going to be part of our family with the Yorubas.
That's really fantastic. It's quite an honor to his legacy, and of course to his family and to all the people that he represents. Of course, Howard University, and just so many people can be impacted by that. And establishing that kind of legacy for him, what does this say to people throughout the world about all of his great work in such a short amount of time?
It shows that royalty is something that comes with grace. It comes with humility. It's not just it's not just a birthright. Royalty is something that you have to exude with pride and humility. So for him, he lived a beautiful life and he served a beautiful purpose. And this is also going to be a beautiful example for children around the world. Not only is he a superhero, not only is he a royal in film that is forever, but he is also an official royal. And we decided this not only because of his beautiful role in Hollywood, but how he carried himself, how he conducted himself, and the legacy of all the films that he played, and playing beautiful leaders that made an impact on the world.
You know what, that is so touching and so inspiring, because certainly we need this kind of message, not only in the United States of America, where there's a racial division going on right now that's led to some violence, quite a bit of violence lately. It's refreshing to see a young Black man like Chadwick Boseman reach the heights of his profession in such a short amount of time, and yet leave a legacy of, as you've mentioned, royalty, humility, kindness, gentleness, and yet strength in stating, like he did in that wonderful production of Black Panther, saying, "We are all one tribe." And certainly that's what you've been seeking to do. And I just appreciate you coming on, Angel, to enlighten us about what you're doing now. South Carolina native, growing up and becoming an international influencer throughout the world as a princess now in Europe as well as Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll make sure that we can continue the legacies and make sure that we have heroes. And that's exactly what Chadwick, His Majesty, represented. And it feels so beautiful when I Google him to see his name as king and to be able to actually install him very soon as a king. Officially today, he is a king, but the installment ceremony will be taking place in the next few weeks.
Thank you very much. Bring us up to date when you make that installment ceremony known, and we'll be glad to update our viewers about it as well. In the meantime, take care of yourself. In wonderful London, you're not far away from the actual royal palace there. You're there in Kensington, London, and I just appreciate you so much and the great work you're doing. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. So the life and legacy of Chadwick Boseman is certainly commendable. He inspired all of us. He also inspired us with his battle against colon cancer because no one knew, and he continued to show up for work. And so I'm bringing in Dr. Geoffrey Mount Varner. He's an ER physician here in the nation's capital, the Washington, D.C. area. And Dr. Mount Varner, first of all, it's good to have you on. I wish it wasn't a better occasion, but what can we learn from Chadwick Boseman's unfortunate death that happened way too soon from colon cancer? And he was actually young to experience this.
What we can learn is, and mind you, I view life and death differently being an ER doctor, but what we can learn is the way this man lived his life. If you think about it, if you at first accept we're all going to die one way, I mean, we're all going to die one day, but he went out a hero. He was at the top of his career. He was doing things within the community and just being kind to like folks. And he managed to keep this to himself because he didn't want to worry others. And he left quietly, but he changed the world before he left. What an honorable death. And if he were here, I would say job well done. As it relates to colon cancer, what it says is that we all have to be on guard. We all have to know our bodies. We all have to get the screenings that we need to get done.
So should we start getting screened earlier? Because now we're seeing, based upon his sudden passing from this life because of colon cancer, that it hits people younger, and we should be actively engaged in testing for it, especially among African Americans, because again, here's another ailment that hits us disproportionately.
90% of people who get cancer, colon cancer, if caught early, and that's stage 1 and 2, it is curable. 90% of them are 100% cured. The moment you develop symptoms, you're at stage 3, and that only gives you a 50% likelihood of being cured, and stage 4, it's even worse. Getting screened is absolutely key. So how do you get screened for stages 1 and 2? It's by getting a colonoscopy or the Cologuard. That's when you take some of your stool, put it in a package, and send it in. That's just as effective, except it's done every 3 years. 90% of cancers are those over the age of 50. The way the medical establishment works is that Chad, unfortunately, still would not have been screened. As of 2019, those 45 and older are screened early. I'm sure there's an argument that can be made to the insurance company if you have a strong family history, but other than that, 45 is the age, and that catches 90%. Just one last point. Chadwick, while unfortunate, he was in that 10%. It's like getting in an accident. You don't know who it's going to be. He was just in that unfortunate 10%.
Yeah, very unfortunate for all of us, not just for him and his family, and certainly to his family. We give our condolences and our prayers, but yeah, it was unfortunate for all of us who loved his career and loved the characters he portrayed, real life heroes, and he himself emerging as a real life hero as well. Your advice to people based on this, should we be more proactive and actually get those screenings prior to the age limit?
You should, if your insurance company will, yes. But as it relates to Black males, the issue of Black males is we don't get our screening tests as done. And I mean, done at the time that we should. And here's why. The moment we leave the like pediatric age group, the medical system doesn't treat us well. And so 20s and 30s, we don't go as often. Then by the time we go in our 50s, we're at the age where we're being diagnosed with things that should have been caught earlier. My point is, it's not about you. It's about our families. So even although the medical system does not treat us well, we still have an obligation to go and get screened.
That's very sobering. I think I better go get screened again. No, really, we do have to be proactive about our health, especially as Black men. And we always have a tendency not to show up, but we've got to start showing up. So like you said, let's not be selfish. Let's be concerned about our families. Dr. Joffrey Mount Varner, I know you'll be joining us again in the days and weeks ahead as we continue to focus on our health in America, especially among us brothers. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
All right, back with more after this. And welcome back. I want to thank all of the guests who appeared on tonight's program, and I do so dearly appreciate their remembrance of Chadwick Boseman. What a great, talented man who leaves us a legacy of hope and inspiration. My final word is this, and it's based on something that he stated. He stated, quote, "When I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left and could say, I used everything you gave me." Thank you, Chadwick Boseman. Hopefully that is something we can all aspire to do, to give God every gift and to share it with the world. Hopefully we've been righted, ignited, and united to keep sharing our gifts of love, freedom, and peace. Good night. God bless.
But it's crimson. We all bleed the same. If you don't feel the groove, it's all right. Just give it time, give it time. Come on, y'all. Get on board. Mankind won't survive if our hearts beat inside a hateful rhythm. You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price of forgiveness, and we all bleed the same. Yeah. If you don't feel it now, just wait. It's coming on, the love train. Just give it time, give it time. Get on board. That means you, and you on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, brothers, all sisters and sisters on the love train. Get on board the love train. Everyone's invited.